Good evening, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel. This is iMac Sports with another football video, and today I'm going over my Week 18 power rankings for the 2023 NFL season. We have finally made it the last week of the season. This is the ultimate week of the season. The penultimate week has just finished, and what a week it was. Let's get right into it. Also, Happy New Year. Most of you will be watching this in the new year. Some of you who are in the western part of the country may be watching this in 2023, but a lot of you will be watching in 2024. So, for the dumpster fire, we have the Panthers at 32, the Commanders at 31, we have the Chargers at 30, and we have the Patriots at 29. Not much to be said here. The Panthers, the Commanders, and the Patriots all lost, as to be expected. And for the Chargers, they lost to the Broncos. It was a pretty tough game. The only reason why I moved them below the Patriots is because the Patriots have been playing better recently. They've won a couple of games, and they played pretty well against Buffalo. Other than the fact that we turned it over a million times, we actually played well offensively, and the Patriots' offense almost looks better than the Chargers' offense at this point in the season, and their defense is one of the best defenses in the league, whereas the Chargers is one of the worst. So that's the reason why I've moved the Chargers below the Patriots, and they were swapped with the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals moved up 2 spots to number 28. They swapped with the Chargers, basically. And this swap happened because they were able to pull out a victory against the Philadelphia Eagles. The Cardinals have now beaten both the Eagles and the Cowboys, so they're racking up wins in the NFC East, although they did lose to the Giants. And overall, Arizona has been doing a lot better offensively since Kyler Murray's return. Kyler's had a pretty good season ever since he's come back. He's been able to move the ball a lot better than the Cardinals' offense was before. And, of course, their defense still isn't great, but they're improving. They look more like they have the last couple of years. They look more like a team that could have gone 8-8 had they played the full season. And, yeah, it looks pretty solid for the Cardinals going into the end of the year. I'm hoping they can win some more games because I really want to get a better draft pick. As for Tennessee and the Giants, they swapped as well. Tennessee got demolished by the Texans now that C.J. Stroud has returned. They made it close the last time, but with C.J. Stroud back, they didn't stand a chance. As for the Giants, they gained 1 spot with their loss this week. They lost to the Rams, but the Rams have been one of the best teams in the league recently. And the Giants have had a lot of good games recently. They've put up a good fight against a lot of really strong teams. Tommy DeVito has been pulling them through. Tyrod Taylor has been pulling them through, and they've been looking pretty decent in a lot of games recently. They won some good games, and they've been close in a lot of other ones. The Jets have stayed in the same spot. They were at the top of this tier last week. They had a pretty tough loss, but it's the Jets. They'll bounce back next week and beat somebody by 40. Oh, no, they're playing us, so they'll lose again next week. But the Jets have been flip-flopping all season, so I'm just going to keep them where they are. Moving on to the NFC Wild Card game. We have the Falcons at 24. We have the Vikings at 23, the Raiders at 22, and the Saints at 21. The Falcons, the Saints, and the Vikings are all kind of on the outside looking in of the NFC Wild Card at this point in time, but this is still a fairly decent category, in my opinion, to have. The Falcons lost 2 positions this week with their loss, their demolition of a loss against the Bears. And the Vikings lost 5 spots with their loss to the Packers. As for the Raiders and the Saints, the Raiders lost 2 positions, and the Saints gained 2. The Saints were able to pull out a very nice victory this week, which brought them back in contention for the division, as they and Tampa are both now 8-8. If the Saints win next week against the Falcons, they could be in control of their division, depending on tiebreakers and what Tampa is able to do. The Raiders lost a very, very, very close game against a strong team in the Indianapolis Colts, and the Raiders have been playing well recently. I didn't want to punish them too much. I think that 2 spots even is a little bit more than I wanted to drop them. They did play a good game against the Colts, and they've been playing really well with Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell has a really good record on the team, and I really love Zamir White in the way that he's been playing on this team. I know that Josh Jacobs is a great running back, but Zamir White has really filled the shoes well. As for the Vikings, they lost 5 spots with their loss to the Packers. It was a really tough game to watch. Thank God for me, because Romeo Doubs saved me in one of my fantasy leagues in the Super Bowl. But that was a tough game. And in the Falcons game, They came off of a demolition of the Colts last week, 29-10, but they weren't able to keep it up. The Vikings have now lost 5 of their last 6 games. So that's why they lost 5 spots. They've kind of been reevaluated this week. Sometimes they reevaluate teams after they've been on a winning streak or a losing streak. I've kind of been hovering the Vikings in the same spot for a while. They haven't really been changing positions much. This week, I finally decided to drop them after they've lost 5 out of 6, because this was the first week where they hadn't really faced one of the top teams in the league. It was a week where they faced a team very similar in strength to them, and it just did not go the way that they expected it to go. Moving on to the wildly inconsistent teams. We have the Bears at 20, we have the Bengals at 19, we have the Packers at 18, we have the Colts at 17, and we have the Broncos at 16. The Bears have increased their record to 7-9, demolishing the Falcons this week, 37-17. The Bengals are at 19 after their loss to the Chiefs. The Packers this week beat the Vikings up to 18. The Colts gained 2 positions, up to 17 with their win over the Raiders, and the Broncos gained 1 spot this week with their win over the Chargers. The Bears have been the highlight of the second half of the season. They're looking like they could go on a run to potentially make the playoffs this year. They're at 7-9. Obviously, they would need a lot to happen in order for that to work out. But they're playing the Packers next week, and they are on a bit of a run. They started off really tough. The last few weeks, their only loss was to Cleveland over the last 5 weeks. They've beaten the Vikings, they've beaten the Lions, they've beaten the Cardinals, and this week they beat the Falcons, and a lot of them have not been close games. And before that winning streak, they also lost to the Lions on Thanksgiving, but that was a very close loss in Detroit on Thanksgiving Day. So big props to the Bears for turning around their season. The Bengals have not looked great over the last couple of weeks. They looked pretty good with Jake Browning starting off, but this week they lost to Kansas City, and last week they got pretty badly beaten. They have been flip-flopping in my rankings, but this week they lost a significant number of points just because other teams have mostly improved. The Packers gained 3 spots with their win, obviously. Strong win. And the Colts and the Broncos weren't the best wins in the world, but they were good enough wins to move them back above the Bengals. Moving on to playoff caliber in 2023, we have the Buccaneers at 15, we have the Seahawks at 14, we have the Jaguars at 13, and we have the Steelers at 12. The Buccaneers lost 3 spots this week with their loss to the Saints. They had been winning their division. They'd been on a tear. Baker Mayfield looked like the next coming of Tom Brady, and then they got demolished by the Saints in the first half. The second half, Baker Mayfield looked like he was trying to replicate 28-3. Instead, this time he wanted to do it 23-0. The replication did not succeed. They weren't able to get enough points to win, but they made a valiant effort. They lost 3 positions mostly because other teams moved up, but it wasn't the worst game in the world. The Seahawks moved down to 14 with a 2 position loss, not because they had the worst loss in the world this week, but just because other teams moved up. Seattle has been really inconsistent this season. They've been up and down all year, and now that they are leveling out to 8-8 just before the playoffs, it's really tough to place them anywhere other than the middle of the pack. They lost to the Steelers this week. The Steelers are another team that are on the cusp of being a top team, but they've been up and down all season as well. So these are all playoff caliber teams in 2023, or 2024, I guess we should say. But that being said, the Steelers did win the game, so I'm giving the Steelers the advantage in this rankings. As for the Jaguars, they had a good game this week. They were able to win. Obviously, it was not against the greatest team in the world. They're against... Obviously, it was not against the greatest team in the world. They're against the Panthers. But they did win 26-0, and they honestly looked better with CJ Beathard than they've looked with Trevor Lawrence the last few weeks. The Panthers don't have the worst defense in the world, and CJ Beathard looked pretty decent out there. The Jaguars, I don't expect to be competitors in the playoffs at all whatsoever, but they had a good game, so I moved them up 1 spot. And then again for the Steelers were able to beat the Seahawks. It was a strong game. They kept the lead the whole time. It was a close game the whole time, but the Steelers did have their cushion and they were able to get the victory. Moving on to Super Bowl 57-ish. This has the Texans at 11, the Chiefs at 10, the Eagles at 9, and the Rams at 8. Three of these teams have been in the Super Bowl over the last 2 years, and the Texans have been the worst team in the league over the last 2 years. The Texans gained 2 spots this week because of the return of C.J. Stroud. C.J. Stroud in his return game beat the Tennessee Titans divisional rivals 26-3. Tough loss for the Titans, but I would have had the Texans at 10 in C.J. Stroud's return, but I just wanted to see them play somebody other than Tennessee before putting them back above Kansas City. The Texans mostly moved out of the top 10 because of C.J. Stroud's injury, but now that he's back, they should be back in the top 10 by next week before the final power rankings of the season. Kansas City gained 0 places this week and lost 0 places this week for their win over the Bengals. It was a shaky victory. It wasn't their greatest game of all time, but they got the victory. They got it done. They did what they're supposed to do, and it was a solid win for the Chiefs. Not much to be said on that one. They won by 8 against the backup quarterback for the Bengals. But yeah, they haven't been playing their best football recently. The Eagles have lost 5 spots this week. Not just because of this game. Obviously, this game was a fluke game against the Cardinals. Most of the times, the Eagles would win that game. But the Eagles have lost 5 of their last 6 games. 4 of their last 5 games. They are on a massive losing streak. They are losing to all the good teams. Now they're losing to bad teams. The Eagles do not look like a good football team right now. They look like a pretty mid to bad football team. And Jalen Hurts is still playing at a pretty decent, almost MVP level, but their defense has been so horrendous all year. It hasn't been anywhere near competent for an NFL playoff team. If the Eagles lose next week, then they will be out of the top 10 going into the final power rankings of the season. If they win next week, they'll barely be in the top 10. They're not looking good right now. They are not looking like a team that's in the running to win the Super Bowl. And for the Rams do look like a team that's in the running to win a Super Bowl. They only gained 1 spot this week because they weren't against the greatest opponent in the world. But they had another phenomenal win with a lot of good offensive talent. They beat the Giants. Again, the Giants have been up and down this season, but they did beat the Giants, who have been giving good teams a tough time recently. They add to their winning streak. And since the return of Kyren Williams, they've beaten a lot of really strong teams. They destroyed the Browns. Their only loss over the last 5 or 6 weeks was against the Ravens in overtime. The Rams look like one of the best teams in the league with Kyren Williams in the lineup. They're 1-3 without him, and they're 8-4 with him. 8-4 is better than Kansas City. It's better than the Eagles. It's better than the Texans. It's better than Buffalo. 8-4 is a strong record. And with Kyren Williams, this looks like one of the best teams in the league. And the version of Kyren Williams we have now on their 5-1 run looks way better than the version we had when they were 3-3 at the beginning of the season. Kyren Williams and this offense are unbeatable right now, other than in the Ravens game. And they're the only team that's been able to not only put up 20 points in the Ravens, but put up 30 in the second half of the season. Moving on to the 3 Musketeers, we have the Lions at 7, the Cowboys at 6, and we have the Dolphins at 5. The Lions lost 1 spot this week, the Cowboys stayed in the same spot, and the Dolphins lost 2. The Dolphins got destroyed this week by the Ravens, 56-19. The Ravens did to them what they did to the Broncos earlier in the year. They just got demolished. This category is the 3 teams that haven't played a lot of playoff teams, but also haven't really been able to beat them either. The Dolphins beat the Cowboys beat the Lions. That has determined the rankings. Although, I do understand that there were some controversies in both of these games. A lot of bad referee calling, especially the most recent one, being that the Lions offensive lineman did go in as eligible, but the refs didn't know which lineman was eligible, and they called the wrong penalty. So there's been a lot of stuff in all these games. I think it's just fair to have all 3 of these teams in the same category. Miami beat Dallas. Dallas beat the Lions. I know that there's a lot of controversy in both of these games, but this is the rankings that I'm putting these 3 right now. It's the tier for the reason. If I could put them all at 7, I would. They should all be tied at 7 or all tied at 6. None of them should be in the top 5, but here we are. Moving on to the strong contenders. We have the Bills at 4, we have the Browns at 3, and we have the 49ers at 2. Buffalo gained 1 spot this week, the Browns gained 4, and the Niners stayed where they were. Buffalo gained 1 spot for beating New England, not because they beat New England, but because the Dolphins lost. And then for the Browns, they gained 4 positions, not, again, because of the team that they beat, but because of the team that they've become with Joe Flacco. Again, same thing with the Rams. With Joe Flacco, this offense has been ignited. Joe Flacco's 4-1 with the Browns. They were 4-1 with Deshaun Watson. So this team is 8-2 with a competent quarterback and 3-3 without a competent quarterback. On top of that, they have a lot of phenomenal wins against strong teams, including a win over the Ravens and a win over the 49ers. The Browns have beaten the 2 best teams in the entire league, and they have had one of the hardest schedules in the league. They're 11-5. The Browns have deserved this spot, and I had them up at number 3 or number 4 quite a while ago. They went down with the injury to Deshaun Watson, but they've clawed their way back up with the impressive resume Joe Flacco has brought upon this team. And then the 49ers are at 2. It was a pretty okay game. They beat Washington. There's not really much to be said there. They didn't gain any spots. Finally, we have the NFL's elite. We have the Baltimore Ravens at number 1. I don't think anyone should be surprised about this. The Ravens were number 1 last week after beating the 49ers, and then this week they demolished the Dolphins. I'm going to be making a whole video on how amazing this Ravens regular season has been next week, because this has been an incredible season. The Ravens offense has been one of the best offenses in the league, and they've had one of the best defense. They've had the best defense, bar none, in the league the whole season. They have a plus 200-something point differential. They beat the Dolphins, the 49ers, and the Lions by like a combined total of like 90 points. They have insane point differential statistics. Lamar Jackson's the front runner for the MVP. This team has been the best team in the league consistently the whole season after week like 4. So Baltimore's number 1. If you want to argue with me about it, don't. I won't listen to any arguments. Baltimore's the best team in the league right now. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and I'll see you guys all in the next one. Peace. Also, Happy New Year to everybody. Happy New Year 2024. I'm excited. See ya.